This is a Hot Pie Media original.
The racial disparity issue and missing persons coverage. This is pretty interesting. And I think I'm going to end up defending. I'm not in the news business. I don't pretend to be in the news business. I never want someone to act as if I'm in the news business. I'm a talk show host. I'm a byproduct of the news. I've said it for 20 years and I'll maintain it now. News is news, and that should be important to you. I think I'm going to defend. I know it's pretty slimy to defend the news business when it comes to what seems to be, and I think it's pretty obvious to all of us, what seems to be a pretty clear racial disparity in missing persons coverage. What is the term? Missing white woman syndrome or something like that. There's no doubt. I have a couple of suggestions why that is, and it should make a little bit of sense. But I'll also introduce something that is not going to be very politically correct. I'm willing to bet there's another aspect to this, and I'm willing to bet that there's a gender disparity when it comes down to missing persons. I think the numbers back it up. There's a racial disparity, and I think the numbers would also back it up about a gender disparity. In other words, a missing guy is going to get a tenth of the coverage of a white missing woman, younger white missing woman. You could probably put age in there too. So we know what is sensational. This Gabby Petito story has highlighted what is sensational to us. And it's a healthy discussion. I don't think there's anything wrong with pointing it out. I don't think there's anything wrong with, all of us feeling a little guilty about the amount of interest. There's a body of a guy from Houston discovered just yesterday, the day before, and it got coverage because of the amount of coverage about missing persons. So I don't know that this discussion is that unhealthy. I really don't. I just would point out that I think it also applies to men. I think it also applies to age. I think we're talking about a very specific and narrow issue here, but I think there's a reason for it. So what's not cool is the television anchor who's now, I don't know if he's fired or not yet, but listen to this story and what he was arguing and how it played out. It's pretty fascinating too. So, Gabby Petito's disappearance and homicide has led to Frank Somerville. Oh my gosh, what a Ron Burgundy name that is. Frank Somerville, Eyewitness News. Frank Somerville has anchored the news at Fox affiliate KTVU for 20 years. No, 30 years. Frank Somerville, Eyewitness News. So he had a disagreement with his bosses. And I think this is pretty interesting, and I got to give the guy some credit. Frank Somerville has been suspended because he argued with his news organization on how they were covering the 22-year-old white woman whose body was found in Wyoming after a massive search involving multiple police departments and the FBI. I mean, it's hard not to pay attention to this story. I'm not into these crime stories, but even I'm paying attention. Now the dog, the bounty hunter, is involved. Somerville wanted to include a tagline at the end of a report on Petito questioning, quote, the extraordinary level of media coverage devoted to the story. Now, I don't know exactly how that was going to be worked in, but he wanted part of the story to be about how they cover the story, which I think is pretty responsible and pretty reasonable on his behalf. Somerville wanted to point out, as many others have throughout the Petito coverage, that American media often disproportionately cover missing white women while overlooking cases involving people of color. Yes, I think it's pretty obvious. I think we have to own that reality, that we are paying more attention, and the coverage seems to be pretty disproportionate. KTVU News Director Amber Eichel reportedly rejected Somerville's plan for the 46-second tagline, and their disagreement over the matter led to his suspension, which I think was a bad move on their part, but they're in the business. Let's be very clear about this. They are in the business of engagements, clicks, viewers, all that. That's his news boss. That's her job. That's your job. So he's 63 years old. He is, turns out, the father of an adopted black daughter. You know, guy had real interest here. I don't think we should question his sincerity in this. So others have drawn comparisons to the mysterious disappearance and death of Illinois grad student Jelani Day, whose remains were identified last Thursday, nearly 3 weeks after his body was found floating in a river. Day, who was black, disappeared around the same time Petito did, but his case has largely flown under the radar. I don't think it's flown under the radar just because he's black. I think it's flown under the radar because he's male, too. And I bet you could document that. This guy, this 46-year-old father out of Houston, they didn't have any coverage. So I don't think it's just about race. I do think it's about gender. I do think it's about age. Day's mother, Carmen Day, says, she said this, I shouldn't have to beg. I shouldn't have to plead. I shouldn't have to feel that there is a racial disparity. I shouldn't have to feel anything like that. I want these people that have these resources to realize this could happen to them. Okay, Jeff, how are you going to defend the news business? It's a weird defense. One, they've only got a certain amount of time. One, people don't watch or pay much attention. It's a pretty competitive, fragmented world, so there's not a heck of a lot of time. So you better do what people want, what you know works. That's what you're going to do. What you know works. So that's the business they're in. I think everyone's right. I think everyone is right in this argument. I mean, that guy's mom is exactly right. I mean, she doesn't seem right that she should have to beg when the missing blonde girl who's murdered is the top story everywhere, every minute, every day. We get it. And she's right. And the news anchor is right. He really feels guilty and wants to own part of this and say, listen, it is an issue. It is an issue in our industry. And I think they should have done a story on. It's what he should have pitched. But here's the thing I don't think people probably completely appreciate. It's not necessarily an excuse, but if you were in the business, you'd probably do much of the same thing. I don't think it's as sinister as white people wanting to only cover stories about attractive young white females. I don't think it's quite that sinister. Media, particularly traditional media, is incestuous. I mean, you just take a look sometime. Like a lot of businesses, more so than probably any other, media is obsessed with competition. It's obsessed with what are they doing. I mean, to a fault, to be honest. But if somebody somewhere gets ratings with a story, you're going to piggyback it. It's just an incestuous response. We can't let our viewers go there, so we better do it there. I mean, I know it sounds convoluted, but that's kind of how the media business works. And that's why I think you get this stuff. It's so incestuous. They're chasing the same audience, and they're terrified of losing out on that audience because that's their job. That's their scoreboard. So a lot of these stories, I'm not in traditional news. I'm not even in non-traditional news. If you just look online, it's the same thing. It's what gets attention. And they're in the same business. And so they're going to follow what gets attention. Now, if you want to place blame on whoever did the story first, but they're getting feedback all the time. They're getting feedback by the minute. And that old school business, they're getting numbers every day, every hour, every half hour for that matter. So they know what works. And they're just going to keep super serving what works. And then their competition is going to see what works, and they're going to keep super serving what works. Now, I mean, if you wanted to put it to the ugly test, and they do, I mean, you could do a story on the 26-year-old young man who went missing, and for whatever reason, the audience, remember, everything is a mirror. Everything is a mirror to you. Everything. The audience, I mean, we could put it to the test, but I suspect we'd find the audience reaction would be different. You can pick that apart however you want. So they're going to do what works. And they're going to do what works for their competition. And so that's why you get this cycle of this incestuous behavior about news coverage. It worked there. Hey, it kind of works here too. Let's just keep doing it. And then the other competition says, well, it works over there. Let's just keep doing that. And it starts this cycle. And that's why this guy's boss pushed back, because she's in the numbers business. You can hate that for all you want, but they are for profit and they are measuring all the time. So they do it, sadly, because it works. And they're not going to stop doing something that works, because they can't, because they are almost Sears. Local TV news is beyond Sears. It's almost to talk radio land Sears. So they don't really have much of an option, except to just keep super serving what works. Is that a weird defense? Yeah, a little bit. I do think it's easy to sit out there and go, well, media is blowing this, media is blowing this. Media is giving you back what you want. Media is giving back what works. So you may want to own that too yourself. We all should feel a little creepy about being obsessed with missing young white woman syndrome, because it's us. It's our fault. They're just giving it back exactly what we've wanted. Hey, every guy can relate to this. You're tired of wearing those baggy cotton shirts that feel like you're wearing curtains. There's a difference. In fact, I'm wearing the difference. That is the ultra premium basics from goodlifeclothing.com. You'll love the shirts. I've been searching for a long time, like every guy, for the perfect lightweight shirt that looks good if you're in pretty good shape. It's at goodlifeclothing.com. Check them out. You'll see the difference for yourself. You'll feel the difference for yourself. It's the perfect shirt for this time of year in Austin, Texas. So, two things. Go to goodlifeclothing.com. You get a 20% discount if you enter the promo code JeffWard20. That's goodlifeclothing.com. Enter the promo code JeffWard20 or stop by their store domain Northside. You'll love the difference. You'll feel the difference. It's the perfect fit for a guy that's in good shape. It's goodlifeclothing.com, promo code JeffWard20, or stop by their brand new store at Domain Northside. I know what you're going to say, and I have some of the same feelings, but there's an interesting twist. Oh, no, not another hot take on Colin Kaepernick. Blah, 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 blah. Colin Kaepernick. Oh, my gosh, we're over it. You're over the basics. We were over the basics. We were over the debate a long time ago. I get it. Trust me. I lived through it. I talked to every angry white guy about Colin Kaepernick. I was there, man. I was there early on. There's a different, finally, is what I'm going to say. Finally, somebody's calling him out the way I've called him out for a long time. So Colin Kaepernick, I believe there's a documentary, which would be pretty interesting. Colin Kaepernick, there's a documentary about him right now. I'll reset it all, even though we all know it. I'll give you my own experience with the rage against Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick, because I've disagreed with everybody the entire time. And I guess finally somebody has said something, because he almost feels, we know the angry white Trump crowd hates him and wants to rant about him. We got that. That's fine. There's no pushback from everyone else on Colin Kaepernick. And I've called that out for some time, and finally somebody has done it. And I would say finally. I mean, look, you can be a righteous crusader, but that doesn't mean everyone has to shut up about everything you do. I mean, people are entitled to pick you apart. And it felt untouchable. And I kept saying it, maybe because I'm a white guy in West Austin, it didn't matter. So Colin Kaepernick, of course, plays for the San Francisco 49ers. He takes a knee during the national anthem. Let's fast forward this. We all know the storyline. My take initially which was to the rage, trust me, the rage of the angry talk radio crowd. Early on, I said, I don't know if this does what he thinks it's going to do. I do respect and admire the fact that the guy stands there and answers for it. He owned what he was doing about police brutality. He owned the camera in front of his face. He owned and accepted that you're going to hate him for his position. I said early on, to the rage of talk radio. Trust me, rage. I don't get where this is going. I don't quite see how it's going to work. I feel like it's a little bit of a disconnect, but I admire someone who is going to be fearless and take a stance and own it. And he did own it. Then, of course, he starts throwing interceptions. He throws the ball to the other team far too often, and he gets cut, which led to debate number 2 in the Colin Kaepernick world, and that is he's being blackballed. Or angry white crowd saying, way to go, white owners, get rid of him. It was that, right? I ended up at this other place where I said, it's not because he's being blackballed, and it's not because owners are taking some position on him. It's because he keeps throwing the ball to the other team. If he threw enough touchdown passes, he could have a headless body in his car, and the owner would pay him. So it was neither of those things. You saw, both sides didn't hate it on me. The rage started coming both ways. You jackass, punk ass, blah, blah, you hate America, the usual stuff. Sorry, I know enough about the football business that if you're good enough, you have a job. So then there was the he's blackballed issue. Or the Trump crowd taking credit saying, we got rid of him. My take, once he was finished in the NFL, was he's not good enough to hire. He's not good enough with all the stuff that comes with it. It's just, he's not worth that much. If I need a third string quarterback, I just need a third string quarterback that's, 1, decent enough. Number 2, not that expensive. And number 3, holds a clipboard and shuts his face. That's what third string quarterbacks do. Oh, I remember the day I compared Colin Kaepernick to Tim Tebow. Oh, the rage. White dude rage was full on that day. You bastard. Not only do you hate America, you hate Christians. You jackass suck. Fire him, fire him, fire him. Hate, hate, hate. And I said, well, let me try to make my point, even though no one's going to hear it. 1, he's not good enough, like Tim Tebow. And number 2, he's not good enough to deal with the stuff. I don't need backup football players to be crusaders. That's not what I need backup football players to do. That message was missed. All right, so then we end up in this other territory. So the effectiveness of Kaepernick, I now think in total, I think it did work. I think it did call attention. I think it did do what he wanted it to do. I didn't see the connection again, but appreciate the fact that the guy took the risks and took the positions that he did. I don't know that I still to this day agree it's the best way to go about it, but whatever. I mean, that's what righteous protests are about. I get it. But then what I thought was lost, so I ended up on the wrong side of every argument along the way. All these years of Colin Kaepernick, every time I ended up with a different argument that made everyone mad at me. And then so 1, I respect the guy for standing up for it. 2, he didn't get blackballed because he's Colin Kaepernick. He's out of business because he's out of the business because he's just got really crappy. He just kept throwing the ball to the other team. Then I said, hey, wait a minute here. For everyone who wants to back the guy up, for everyone who's saying, right on, man, you've led to a lot of changes, how come you're not calling him out for going silent and taking money from NFL owners? Because he did. You suck. Now that all of a sudden the white angry crowd, talk radio crowd, had no idea what I was talking about because they wouldn't read anything anyway. Then you had people that defended you suck, you jerk, white punk ass, blah, blah. Hey, I mean, if I really wanted to be behind the guy, I might be calling him out right now and say, hey, man, why'd you quit on me? Why'd you take the money? What people don't know and haven't followed, and I don't know if the documentary goes into this, and this is a long way of me setting up somebody finally calling him out. And I think it's cool. That's the way that things work. So Kaepernick has a claim against NFL owners, a collusion claim against NFL owners, which I thought was pretty fascinating. The NFL masterfully got rid of him, got him to be quiet, masterfully got away from a horrible PR disaster. So he files a collusion claim against the owners. In other words, and I didn't know exactly how collusion law worked, but it didn't take all 32 owners to collude not to hire him. It just took 2 of them. So the case is settled. Before he even gives a deposition, I believe certainly before he was going to give videotape testimony, the NFL owners were smart enough. These are the most powerful 32 people on the planet. They are not going to hurt their business. What would have been a disaster for them is to have that guy, pretty smart guy, being very clear and alleging they were colluding. I don't know if we know for a fact that two owners said, I don't want to hire him. You don't want to hire him. Okay. I don't know how that gray area was. They didn't care. Get him out of here. Get him out of here. Shut him up now. We don't need it. We don't want it. And guess what happened? He left. And I called him out and said, wait, whoa. Hey. I get that they offered the guy a bunch of money. We don't know to this day how much, but it was a lot. And you could say, hey, who wouldn't take the money? He's a young man. He wants the money. Okay. But with that, I said numerous times, if you really were behind the guy and you really thought he was going to fight those 32 owners who represent a lot of terrible things in your mind, you ought to be mad at him for taking the money and shutting up. Crickets. I give you, he's not exactly the most likable and sympathetic figure himself. I'm just pointing out that for the first time, somebody has had the guts, and they should. If Kaepernik, you want to give credit for Kaepernik having guts, then give people credit for having guts to call him out and not angry white man. Give people who are saying, wait a minute, man, I feel like you kind of betrayed me. You sold out. Because I think it's a legitimate argument. Can you blame him for selling out? Well, that's a take you can have. But I think what has been amazing to me, having been caught in the middle of this fight all these years, and if you want to say you have no stake here because white guy, fine, I'll accept that too. I'm just calling out people who are not calling him out. And finally, somebody did, and it happens to be a former Dallas Cowboys player, kind of a hothead himself. He's kind of a hot mess. But I appreciate where he went. Dez Bryant, who played for the Cowboys, a very, very good player, played for the Ravens. I don't know what he's doing now, but he's on a podcast, and I thought it was an interesting, maybe because I agree with him, an interesting take that you haven't heard before, and that is, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. The guy kind of just left the stage when he was all about the stage.
I respect Colin Kaepernick, but there's one thing that I don't respect. And I said it when I get the opportunity and to get on the stage to say it, I would say it. And I love him to death. So it ain't no hate or nothing like that. But brother, you had the biggest opportunity in the world to create jobs, build jobs, give jobs to people. The people that you was talking about, the people that you so-called standing up for, the people who stood beside you, the people who lost their jobs because of you. Where you at? I ain't heard from you. He brought the awareness, and that's why I respect him.
But what's the call to action?
There wasn't one. There wasn't no call to action.
We had to fight to get it.
Yeah, I said that. I would take it a step further, which I don't. Maybe they did in this discussion, and good for them. I like thinkers. I like people who think. I like people who hang in there. The world is full of just stupid. Challenge every now and then. I think it was a healthy challenge. I think Dez Bryant, this argument has been untouchable, probably untouchable for a young black man. And I think it took guts. What he also should have said, which I don't think can be dismissed. And by the way, and I mean, you can say it's unfair to dump this issue only on Colin Kaepernick, but he's right. You took the stage. You maintained the stage. You went through hell and back, man. Or to some people, you prospered because of it. But you took the stage, and you were going to be a righteous crusader, and you bailed. You bailed. And that's what he's saying. And I think it is a reasonable take. What he then should have said is, and by the way, the very industry that you said effed you over, you took their money. You took their money to shut up. Now, I can't prove exactly that he got paid in the defamation. It was a defamation case, not a defamation case. It was a collusion case. But there was a settlement. He never testified that it was gone, done, end of story. We don't know how much money it was. We will never know because those owners are smart enough. But don't tell me that he didn't get paid. And he didn't get paid, and he then basically left the stage. And that should be called out too. If you want to say I don't blame you for taking the money, say I don't blame you for taking the money. But Des Bryant is right. Man, you wanted to fight this fight. You lost your job, some people believe, because of this fight. You lost your job to 32 white guys. They screwed you over. And you still should be fighting them. Instead, you did exactly what they wanted you to do in the worst way possible. They paid you to shut up, and you did it. Call them out for that, too.
From the Hot Pie Media Studios in Austin, Texas, it's the Jeff Ward Show. Listen at jeffwardshow.com.